Here we go. Welcome to Control Talk, now your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending April 25th. That's right, folks. April's almost over. This is episode 397, where we talk about all things smart building controls, including cybersecurity, HVAC controls, and whatever else your host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only Marc Peatock from Virginia. Marcus is filling in for Kenny today. Hey, Mark, welcome to the show, big dog.
I appreciate it. Great to be here. I am substituting for the true, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, the man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Kenny Smyers. He's off on one of his other secret missions, if you can believe it again. We have no idea where he is, other than the big rumor is he was in that space launch that just occurred, and he might be up in the space station because they needed controls. So we'll have to find that out.
Mark, we like to do this with our audience every time Kenny goes on one of these secret missions, and that's definitely one of the possibilities. So if you want to play along, reach out in comments and select where you think Kenny's up at the space station. Mark, the other choices are bad news for you. He's out on a date with Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelisi, two of those supermodels he used to hang out with in the 80s. Ralph Lauren's called him again for another photo shoot. And last but not least, man, Elon Musk has asked Kenny to come in and give him some advice on the new Tesla car that's coming out. So those are your four choices, buddy.
So, well, it'll be interesting what the viewers kind of vote where Kenny is. This is almost like what's that kid's game? Where's Waldo?
Well,
we should have this. Where's Kenny?
Well, no, true fact here. I mean, actually, they based that game on Kenny. It was originally called Where's Kenny because they knew Kenny Smyers, and he was always disappearing on these secret messages. So, there's actually a Waldo Smyers. I think he's a cousin somewhere along the line. So, yeah. But Marcus, talk to me, brother. What you been up to?
So, I gotta say, I took my first airplane ride in 13 months. I just got off the plane, and I got to tell you, nothing has changed as far as just like riding a bike. Get back on, you ride it again. The only thing that was just a little, interesting is just watching everybody with mask at the airport, mask as you're coming into the airport, mask as you're sitting on the plane, and so forth and so on. But I have to say is I'm back, and it's travel time again, which it does feel good.
That's great because I'm with you. I haven't flown yet. I'm ready to fly, but I think we got a really good suggestion for people that want to get out and fly. I mean, there's something coming up very, very soon that's near and dear to your heart. So let's talk. Let's give people a destination to go to. Where would you recommend they fly to, Mark, on their first?
Well, this is still virtual, I have to say. Project Haystack. We have our Project Haystack Connect event May 4th through the 6th, and it's really wrapping up to be a really good event. Content is done, completed, and will be posted here up on the website. Registration is free, and definitely encourage everybody to come and join us. What's interesting, and I think we might have mentioned this previously in a discussion, is that this year, March celebrated Project Haystack, the organization's 10th year. So we've been at this for 10 years talking about data, tagging, modeling, and the importance of data and all that kind of stuff. And also coming out this month, probably next week, is the spring edition of Haystack Connections magazine. A lot of good articles and stuff on there. So register, just go to projecthaystack.org or haystackconnect.org for the event and register. It's free and we welcome everybody. So hopefully a lot of the listeners will be joining us.
Oh gosh, let's hope so. And I think the great news about it being virtual, Mark, you know what that means? That means we can go any place on the planet we want to and watch it online. So I don't know, maybe Miami again, or where should we go watch it? We could go get a watch party and go someplace fun, right?
Absolutely. That sounds like a good idea. As long as you're paying.
Well, I might pay.
Okay.
We come to Atlanta and we could go down and watch at the Varsity, which is this kind of famous restaurant downtown that has hot dogs and chili dogs. I'll pay for that. If anybody wants to come to Atlanta and watch Haystack Connect with me from the Varsity, just reach out in comments and we'll make a party of it, right? It will be good times, good times. Mark, I got to tell you, man, congratulations on the Haystack. Kenny and I were at the very first one you guys did in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we've been to every one since then. You guys just keep getting progressively better and better and better. And it just, kudos, man. This was like, just this idea you guys came up with and stuck with, and it's grown and it's just gotten legs. So, fantastic. I guess real quick, I always tell Kenny, we got to get stable datum. If anybody's been under a rock for the last 10 years, tell them real quick what Haystack Connect is and the Haystack tagging so that they know. And then we got some guests we got to get on, a couple of superheroes.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about our guest. But again, it's, we've talked about the importance of data. And again, this is all about organizing the data, tagging it, modeling it, and making it consistent so that whoever is utilizing the data, it's all being utilized, the same information, everything's called the same thing. And one of our guests coming up actually is the head of one of the working groups on cybersecurity, who we'll introduce him here in a few minutes. But again, the importance of data in the controls world, the smart buildings world is, I think we're really starting to see how tagging and modeling and all this is really coming together and coming to fruition.
No, it really is, Mark. And I guess, again, just to get real simplistic terms, we got Martin Villeneuve from, France, from the folks at Distech, and he might call an air temperature sensor La Temperature Sensor Uno. And our friends from down in Mexico might call it, something else. But everybody sort of slightly says different thing, calls things different things. So what Haystack allows you to do, you can call whatever you want to call it. Martin can call it a French thing, or Spanish people can call it Spanish. Any place in the world you can do that, and then it normalizes it. So the system, if you want to share the data, it knows exactly the same. It's like having a translator at the UN, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's cool stuff. But I got to tell you stuff. With data, with more and more data, and more people want data, Mark, the need for cybersecurity and protecting the data and protecting your system, because more and more stuff gets opened up, is critical. And I tell you what, this whole COVID thing is giving all those hackers more time to sit around and figure out how to break into systems and stuff like that. But man, we got two superheroes, man. I'm going to let you introduce the first one. I mean, he was Batman of cybersecurity, but Batman was still in bat diapers. So how about introducing our first?
Oh, I'm delighted to. And this particular individual, he and I started chattering and talking about cybersecurity back in 2012. I kind of went back, which I can't believe. And we've been talking about it ever since. But I am delighted to welcome to the show Mr. Fred Gordy, who is head of cybersecurity at Intelligent Buildings. And without a doubt, and again, let me say that again, without a doubt, is one of our industry's leading experts in and around the world of cybersecurity, especially as it relates to the building environment. So Fred, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Fred.
Guys, I can't tell you how much of a thrill and honor it is to be here, because I want to tell you something. As you guys were talking, I was sitting here and something dawned on me. I got three gentlemen on the screen, or three gentlemen on today, that have had a hand in where I am today. And what I mean by that, I'm just going to take you one at a time. I know I don't usually do this, but it really struck me when I'm looking at the screen, is Marc Peatock, as he said, um, when I first started doing this, he was one of the first people that stepped in beside me and said, "Let's go," you know. And so he kind of inspired me to do that, to do what I've done. And then Eric Stromquist, you gave me confidence, whether you know it or not, because it was like you were a cheerleader, and I gotta say, having that really helped me move to where I am. And the gentleman that's going to join us today, and I'm going to let him talk about some of the particulars about what he's been doing. But I gotta say this: from you two guys, I met this other gentleman on the rooftop of a building and he didn't know me from Adam, but he took the time because for whatever reason, I don't know why, and listened to me. But then he also shared with me experience, and he taught me, things. He introduced me to the cybersecurity professionals that I couldn't even begin to feel like I belonged in, but he brought me in. And that gentleman is Derek Harp, who has a long history in cybersecurity and is also one of the people that have inspired me to do what I've been doing. So, Derek, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, sure. Welcome. Thanks for the great welcome to the show. What an interesting and long and storied bios of all three of you, and so it's a pleasure to be here. Um, you know, I got introduced to cybersecurity when I was serving the Navy in the mid '90s, and got kind of thrust into it and working with people who knew far more than me. Still the case today, if in case all three of you fit this description. But just trying to get my hands around, this issue then. And so, it's still the case today as I find myself trying to work with lots of different people. And the natural offshoot of that was, I suppose the interim step was I started a number of companies. And so I became this entrepreneur and mostly in cybersecurity, not always. And then since about 2011, went back to just staying with cybersecurity. And somewhere about 6 years ago, and Fred, you and I've talked about this, you were right there. There was this commercial side of me working on startups and software products and things that we do to help fix obviously part of the problem in this overall cybersecurity space. And so 2012, when I moved into the cybersecurity for control system space, there was a lot of new learning for me. It's like, oh, there's some differences here. And I started meeting different people right away who, were saying, well, on this side of the fence, there's some challenges. And I don't remember who put this together, Fred, but it was, or maybe you just reached out, but it's, oh, buildings, yeah, building controls, yeah, let's get together and talk. So that's why we met, is because I was really interested in, what are all the systems that are connected in buildings, and you knew that backwards and forwards, and we started talking about it, and we formed a group, to meet up in Atlanta, Georgia, and talk about, control systems, not just buildings, but maybe manufacturing and whoever else we could get together. And that one single rooftop meeting, and then I think the first meeting we had, which could have been in the same building, I think downstairs with 30 or 40 people. 6 years later, we got 20,000 people have signed up. We have meetings in lots of different countries and cities and activities and continuing ahead. And it's a 501c6 nonprofit workforce development organization focused exclusively on people who are trying to work, across this control system problem. So wouldn't have said that's where I would be end up doing, but I must admit, it's been very satisfying work. A lot of people saying, this is working. You connected me, or we, the organization has connected you with someone I needed to know, and somebody we needed to bring onto our team, or somebody we need to partner with. So I love that connecting. And I suppose that's my role in the industry is trying to get people together.
Well,
Real
Brian,
quick, Eric, I got to say something. Another tie I just thought of is Marc Peatock was one of the speakers, or came to the early
Atlanta.
on. Yeah.
One of the very first meetings, very first speakers. That's right.
Yeah.
And Eric Stromquist allowed us to use his facility to have one of our meetings. So again, ties.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something else. I got to tell you, don't get offended if you ever allow these guys to, to host one of these meetings and they refuse to use your Wi-Fi or your internet, okay? Because they're all very, very careful. But Derek, I got to tell you, man, thanks for taking the time and being on the show. Welcome. We're so glad to have you. And guys, just first thing right off the bat, I'm assuming this organization is open for people that are interested in learning more about cybersecurity. Is that it?
I was going to say, tell us about the organization itself. What's the heart and soul of the organization? And how do you participate? Where do you go get info and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Control System Cybersecurity Association International. So that's a CS and a little squared superscript AI. We call it CSA for short. And so CSA.org, CS2AI.org is the website. It's a 501c6 org. Our main, one of our bread and butter things that we do, we have some aspirational things, but we deliver continuing education content now nearly every Wednesday at 1 p.m. We're almost on tempo now for that. And that's a huge increase. In the early years, it wasn't like that. So there are chapters. And so there are things that happen, especially pre-COVID and post-COVID, knock on wood. There's chapters meeting in different cities, over 100 cities where there's formation of chapters. And so that's governed by a local leadership team. And so, there's not, that varies from city to city, as you can imagine. But at the global level, we thought, we need to reach 20,000 people, 10 of which are outside, outside the North America region, and some of them are in very disparate locations. How do we get them? What I'd like to say now is, how do we get the wisdom of the few, people like on this call, you guys, the wisdom of the few, and share that with the many? That's something we can do, and we can do it virtually. Pre-COVID, we can do it virtually. So when COVID comes along, we just increased and are doing more of that than we ever thought we would be. It's just every Wednesday at 1, different experts, either solo speakers or panelists, and we do a lot of Q&A, so there's a lot of chance for interaction. So there's other things we do, but that main piece now is established every Wednesday, and we're recasting that at 3 a.m. for people in the other half of the world, so they can get a more appropriate time. It's not live at that point, but they can listen to what happened earlier that day in the other half of the world. So we're getting hundreds of people to come to every single one of those sessions. So that's the easiest, quickest plug-in, is sign up as a free associate level member and come to, get on the list and come to the educational sessions. Pick the ones that interest you the most.
And do you archive these educational sessions, and that people who, let's say, join tomorrow, but want to go back and find subjects and things like that? So it is archived?
Yeah, we do, Mark. And now, unfortunately, not going all the way back to when you did your first session live in Atlanta.
Thank goodness. But anyway, yeah.
But yeah, the global virtual ones going back to 2018, sometime in 2018, are all recorded. And they're in a member resource library. Cool. So what we did establish was a paid level of membership. It's very inexpensive, but it just says, hey, here's some other benefits. So come to live sessions. There's no cost. We're not going to change that. We got to get the education out there. It's part of our mission, right? But, oh, by the way, there are some other things we're doing, and there's some other things you can access. And one of those is this library of all the, on-demand content going back to 2018. And that's actually for global members. But it's, I think, $129 a year. If you're an educator, it's $39 or $29 a year, or a student. So we really want to help educators and students. So it's the same level of access for a much reduced price.
Mm-hmm. So let me also ask you this. It's from the organization perspective. I assume that some of the leadership in the organization, you guys would be open to speaking at events and things like that, or participating, obviously if schedules permit, if all the stars align. But I would think to the folks listening that, these guys know cybersecurity. And let's face it, our industry, we're still trying to build the environment, is still learning it. We're learning something each and every day. I think we all can agree that's the way it is. But with this level of members that you have and the expertise, I think it's a great resource, as well as the folks who are, leading the organization as well.
Mark, I think, I'm glad you brought it up. That is the case. I'm floored and flattered by the Global Advisory Board, our fellows program. Fred is a fellow, a CSA fellow, one of the founding fellows. Between them and chapter presidents, and there's sometimes people who are all those things. It's an amazing group of people. It's I've never done the math to say how many people can go back so many years saying they've started to work on this problem. Like you guys were talking in 2012, you get into the early 2000s, it's just a small number of people relatively that are already saying, hey, we've got a problem here in these control, these connected, cyber to physical, all these terms that were starting to be, bubble up. And so the fact that so many of these pioneers are, evolved with us and giving us their time and expertise and serving as fellows and advisors, it's amazing. So yeah, a lot of these people are willing and do speak in different capacities. We've started to, almost see that we might have sort of a unofficial speakers bureau in that we've got all those connections, and so people can say, hey, do you have a person that knows? And we say, yeah, we do. Whatever that topic is, if it's oil, gas, manufacturing, buildings, we have experts that are aligned and volunteering. We're a members helping members organization. So
Very, very cool. Well, listen, I want to ask a question, Fred. I'm going to direct it at you first, and then Derek, Mark, please, hop in, and I'd like to get your take on it too. Fred, we've talked over the years about cybersecurity, and one of the key sort of issues, at least early on and up till last time we talked, was people weren't necessarily, I'm talking about building owners, that were not necessarily taking it so very seriously, right? I mean, they weren't putting the time and the energy into getting it figured out. I guess I would ask, since last we spoke, which was pre-COVID, right? What has that shifted? What are you seeing with that, and what sort of new trends are you seeing vis-a-vis cybersecurity?
Well, let me say this: the tide is turning ever slowly, but the tide is turning. We have had now. I'm going to say something. Eric, I usually pick on integrators because that's where I came from, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but I mean, listen, let's face the fact, we just didn't have any guidelines to start with. But what I'm seeing, and this is typical for the controls industry, it's like when data analytics came out. Well, the integrators weren't the first ones to jump on that. It was the end user. And so therefore, like when I was an integrator, the end users were coming to us saying, hey, can you do this for me? Well, then we would start learning that kind of stuff as an integrator. Well, the mission I'm kind of on now, not that my mission has changed, but I've added to it, is the end users are beginning to come to us. And I said this years ago, that integrators, you need to be aware of what's coming, because what you're going to have is you're going to have end users who are saying, this is what I want. And if you are not up to speed, you're going to get left behind. So I'm happy that the end users are the ones that are coming to us saying, hey, assess my buildings and this kind of thing. But the integrators need to get in lockstep with that, because there are guidelines and controls and everything that is coming out specifically for building control systems. In fact, I'm on a group, it's called buildingcybersecurity.org, and I'm on the framework committee, and we are actually developing standards for buildings for commercial real estate right now that hopefully will be released at the end of the year.
Fred, on that piece right there, how does that work in conjunction with like NIST and other things that we all, or at least most of us, have some knowledge of and following? I know we at my company, we are following the NIST guidelines in everything we do, whether it's the way we operate as well as how we produce and manufacture our controls and our devices and software and so forth and so on.
So it's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. I too, when I started my journey, the first thing that I latched on to was NIST 853A. I mean, that's been my Bible through this entire time. But the group that I'm a part of is what they're trying to, or not trying, what they are doing is they're taking NIST, they're also taking 27001 and 62443. The 62443 and 27001 are more international standards. But what we're doing is we're mapping the three so that there's actually continuity across all of them. And my kind of role on this journey here is I'm speaking from the building cybersecurity side of things, because some of these other people, they come from IT and that kind of thing, but they're listening to me when they say, well, we need to do so and so, and I'm telling them, look, you can't come out of the gate with a big sledgehammer. You got to just kind of chip away a little bit at the beginning in order to get acceptance. So yes, this is all foundationally built on 3 very robust standards.
And then once you guys have completed this and it's ready for prime time, you obviously going to share it with the building environment community, SIs, OEMs, distributors, integrators, contractors, and so forth and so on. And obviously the end user community as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, quite frankly, the target right now is the end user, but with some educational pieces for the integrators. In fact, there are a couple of manufacturers that are working on the same group that I'm in. And so, even, I mean, with your background and everything, there's the responsibility at the end of the day is the end user. They have to be responsible for what they put in their buildings. They can choose which product they put in. They can choose which integrator they do, but they also choose either to follow policy and procedure or not. But at the end of the day, it's their name on the outside of the building.
It's interesting you bring that up. You remember when you and I first started talking about this, and I'd referenced it before 2012. And we kind of came up with, who owns this? Whose responsibility is cybersecurity? And we kind of at that time said it was a shared responsibility between the owner operator, the integrator contractor, and then of course the manufacturers, okay, who are producing the devices and the software. So do you think after all these years of doing what you've been doing with respect to cyber, are you seeing that change a little bit? It sounds like yes, because again, you're putting more heavy emphasis on the owner operator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to, me, Mark, I put things in kind of like relate them in story form. So I think of it like when I buy a car, okay? There's an onus that's on the manufacturer of that car, right? If the wheels fall off and because of shoddy manufacturing, that's on them. The mechanic, if they work on it, the integrator, they work on it and they do something to affect it. But the reality is most of the problems and most of the accidents are caused by who? The guy that's doing this.
Exactly. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, and I tell people this all the time in the job that I do. I mean, I consult and I say, they say, well, what about this manufacturer? And what about that manufacturer? And I'm like, they're all trying to get this stuff secure, but you are not protecting the perimeter. You've got to protect that. And then you also got to get your people to understand that they have a role in this too. Because I can tell you, statistically speaking, in all the events that we've been involved in, over 80% of them were because somebody clicked an email and locked up the control system. Mm-hmm. Well, first off, why are you using your control system to check your email? Yeah. I mean, that's a simple fix. And I like to tell people, this is a problem that was 100% avoidable. Yeah. 100%.
Well, I want to get back to it, guys, and ask, because Mark, I know you're a manufacturer. I know your company takes cybersecurity very, very seriously. And Fred, to sort of get back to it, you can put seatbelts in cars, but you can't make people wear the seatbelts, right? So it's ultimately up to the driver to put the seatbelts on. But Mark, speak a bit about, how you guys view cybersecurity. And then Fred, I'll ask you, and Derek, you as well. I mean, are there differences with how manufacturers are hardening their systems? Notable enough that users should check into it? And if so, what should they be asking?
Well, as I see it, first and foremost, the manufacturer has to be committed to the overall concept of making whatever they're producing as cyber secure as possible, okay, as possible. Taking the extra initiatives and things like that in the code that they develop, the hardware, having secure boot technology on the hardware and so forth and so on. And, there's not one right answer as far as I'm concerned. There's multiple, but you have to be doing something in order to do that, because I still believe it's a shared responsibility. But to echo what Fred said, I have noticed over the last year and a half to 2 years an increase on the building and owner side, where when they are out looking at technology, looking at products for their buildings and so forth and so on, cybersecurity is now part of the conversation. And it's not one of those afterthoughts. It's right front and center. And in fact, you're starting to see very detailed questions in RFIs and RFPs that are coming out that specifically address cybersecurity. I know we have been working with a major financial client, and during the time of the relationship, every year we get a questionnaire about cybersecurity and what we're doing and so forth. And it's 35 to 45 pages just on cybersecurity, which I applaud them. I absolutely applaud them. So, you know, I, as I said, I think most manufacturers today in our space, especially the ones that have been around for a while, I think they all have accepted cybersecurity and doing everything they can to increase the cyber posture of what they are bringing to the marketplace. But I think some of the newer, I'll be upfront, some of the newer, let's just say IoT folks who are trying to capture the moment right now, I don't see the cybersecurity side of what they're putting out there at all, to be perfectly honest with you. They're not addressing it.
Well, very cool, Fred. And I guess, you advise clients all the time. Maybe another way to frame the question for you and Derek would be, when a client comes in, you're consulting with a client, and maybe they say, okay, we got these 4 different manufacturers that are doing products. What do you look at when you approach it from a cybersecurity standpoint with the is it just hardware? Or are you looking at, what are you looking at so one manufacturer gets a better rating than another?
Well, I'm going to say this, and I do want to hand this off to Derek because he's at a different level than I am and sees a bigger world in the. I even saw Derek shaking his head when you brought up IoT. But I'll say this very quickly. I know this. Let me back up and say this. Mark said it best when he's talking about the shared responsibility. So when I go in and advise somebody, quite frankly, the first thing I do is look at their policies and practices. I mean, if you're hanging stuff out there on the internet and I can see it with Shodan or Senses, what can I do for you? If you're going to leave it out there, that's like, putting your child on the road and hoping nobody hits it, So until you educate those people that are doing those systems, not that we don't do the other side. I don't want it to sound like it, because we do. We go through and look at all the hardware settings and look at, do you have out-of-date applications, out-of-date OS, and we'll give you a report on that. But I always strongly say, unless you're willing to sit down with your people and do an OT cyber awareness program, you're going to be right back where you were. But I'll let Derek talk about the IoT side of things, or the bigger picture.
A bunch of different memories bubbled up. I think the short answer is more or less, I think you guys have already addressed it, right? It varies widely. But I'm thinking of these as exposures. And I remember one that really made it clear to me. This is some years ago, so let's hope we've progressed from this. But was a long-standing company that had been custom programming PLCs, doing software in PLCs. Well-respected, worked on a variety of major, brands as far as end user equipment that they would, write custom things for. And in meeting with their CEO and a couple senior team members, I asked in the meeting something about a secure development lifecycle, and not the answer I wanted, got a pushback on how that wasn't necessary. We're on an endpoint that's not going to be touching anything out there. So we don't, and the answer was no. They did not have any process within their company for how they, secure code by design and reviewing that code. That's a fundamental maturity problem, of epic proportions. If we have lots of companies producing things, so that wasn't a fly by the seat of your pants IoT. I've got a new device and I'm manufacturing it probably somewhere else in the world, and I want to sell thousands of them on Amazon. We know those folks are not, in many cases, mature whatsoever, nor even motivated to do something. So without regulation, I think some of those people will never ever do anything to harden their device. But in this case, this was a U.S. based trusted company doing good good work, custom work for PLCs, but not having any methodology whatsoever in-house to do that securely. That's just, we all have to say, I think the end user community has to say, not going to buy your device or not going to have you do certain work for me, because if you don't have some of these minimum things in place, I'm moving on to someone else.
That's kind of scary, Derek, to think that, otherwise very, very competent integrator
Yeah.
and just sort of ignoring it and not realizing the seriousness of the problem. Fred, do you see that a lot with some of the people you're dealing with as well?
Well, that's a kind of an interesting question. People don't, the integrators and stuff don't tell me all they don't, they're God, that's going to sound bad. I'm not meaning that they're lying to me, but I'm not going to hear everything. Okay. They'll tell me, yeah, we're working on this, we're working on that, because usually I'm delivering bad news. But here's the thing, and I think I've told you all this before. What I'm seeing is I keep going back to the end user, is there are people that we're working with right now. What they've done is they've come up with a vendor compliance, not a hard one, a very simple. I'm talking about 30 questions to ask their vendors, and they're I like to say they're tying it into their accounting system. And what I mean by that is they'll get the vendor will get the compliance questions, they'll answer them, they'll pencil whip them. It's not just me, but myself and my team will look at those responses and we'll say, this looks pencil whipped. So we'll call them and we'll say, well, tell me what you're doing. Okay. And then we'll give them a score, and that goes to the customer. The customer says, okay, we're putting you on 6 months probation. We're going to do these compliance checks periodically. And if you get up to a C, then we're going to continue on. If you don't, we're going to put you on probation. And if the end of the year, if you're not compliant, you're off our books. Mm-hmm. So everything's motivated by dollars, right? So how else can you get them to do it? And having been an integrator, it's an expensive proposition to install this stuff. And so you want to make sure that your costs are kept to a minimum, and they view these things as a cost add. So,
Derek, is it true that one of the services you guys offer is that the cybersecurity vendors or the integrators are not doing what they need to do, that you guys will hold their system through ransomware until they comply? Is that a new tactic you guys are using?
Yeah.
Oh, we got a
disturbance. I could not hear any of the recent commentary.
I got to check my headset.
Well, I mean, because it's happening, right? More and more ransomware is happening, and are you guys seeing more instances of that?
Well, this is one of the. I'm glad you brought that up, Eric. This is one of the areas that I want to address with Fred and Derek. Especially within the built space, are you guys seeing an increase in ransomware? And maybe can you cite a recent example, no names mentioned, where how it occurred, why it occurred, or what you guys might have uncovered?
Well, Derek, this is kind of a segue into something that we're going to do next week, because I'm going to tell the story, and I don't think I'm taking anything away from next week, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But here's a very good example. What do people not do? They don't do good backups. I've talked about the fact that they're checking their email on their application server. Okay, there was a customer that one of the guys he got an email from somebody that looked like they were in their department. It looked like the guy's email address, but we know underneath it wasn't. But anyway, he said he sent him a PDF, and he clicked it, or no, he sent him a link. And when he clicked the link, it took him nowhere. So later on in the day, he sees the guy coming through, and he says, "Hey man, that email you sent me, the link didn't go anywhere." And that guy said, "What email?" And so that got that guy to thinking, well, I'll do a backup because something's wrong. He did a backup. Later on, they got hit with ransomware. They're like, oh, we got a backup. So what they did was they got the vendor in there, they reinstalled the backup, and everything's good. They didn't have to pay the ransom. They came in the next morning. Now, we all know a thing called alarm fatigue. you get so many alarms, you just quit listening to them. Well, they came in the next morning. They hadn't gotten any alarms, which was kind of unusual. And as it turned out, um, the long story of it is the bad guys, when it got reinstalled, that stuff was still in there, and it sent out a beacon to say, "Hey, I'm back up." And they also put in what was called a remote access Trojan, or a rat, and they went in and they overrode the VFD safeties, rammed them up, turned them down, got the pumps cavitating. This company, it took them 92 days to get back online. And
Oh
that
my
was
gosh. My
And
goodness
and
gracious.
what was, beside the 92 days, how about what was the loss of productivity, the cost to the financial cost to the business and maybe their customers? I mean,
Well, we did a kind of a rough, because in this kind of situation, it's hard to really, get everything down. But we figured it up. It was right around $600,000.
Holy smokes.
Wow.
Holy
So,
smokes. Well, listen, guys, I want to transition to something really important that's happening next week. Fred, you alluded to it, but I think we got to set it up with, I know you've started another career. You and Marc both have. Marc had done some acting before back in the days in the 80s and the 70s at Studio 54 with all his supermodel friends. So he is no stranger to the limelight. But Fred, little did we know that you've been doing some online courses with Martin Scorsese, and you've got your first big feature thing coming up. Will you tell our audience a bit about it?
well, wow. What can I say there?
Hey, by the way, when are the Oscars coming up? Best
Yeah.
directorial, debut.
Leading
Sorry.
actor sitting
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But before Fred mentions, we did talk to Spielberg and Lucas and Fred, and we chose Fred.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
absolutely. Very good,
Excellent,
Derek. Very
excellent.
good.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
I'm going to let Derek kind of set it up, because he's actually, with CSA, he started this symposium program. So if you'll just say a little bit about the symposium, and then not dropping it in my lap, but asking me to do it.
Yeah, sure. I'll gladly drop it in your lap as the chair of the event. It should be dropped in your lap. You're doing a great, amazing job preparing for it. So it's not a conference. It's not a webcast. And so we're doing these regular weekly, now weekly cadence webcasts, and they go typically about 90 minutes. And there was something in between that and a full conference, and that's hard to do online virtually. And so what is this interim thing? And so discussion and these things bubbled up, like, well, let's do something that's longer, 3-4 hours. And so we called it a symposium. And we just said we do seminars, so why don't we call these symposiums, and maybe we'll do something bigger someday and we'll call it a summit. So we have 3 S's. And so the symposiums, we did one for healthcare systems and medical devices in November, had record numbers in attendance, in registering for it, and coming and staying and asking questions. And it's like, wow, okay, so this tripped a nerve. And Fred right away is like, hey, let's do, what are you doing next for the next symposium? Are there going to be more? I said, yeah, let's do a couple next year. I think we'll do 4 this year. And he said, well, I think we should do buildings. And I said, well, that sounds great. How would you like to chair it? He said, I would. So, that is where this came from. And it's April 28th. It's next Wednesday. We've got a lot of registrations already, more coming in now every day. And Fred's original idea was, could we do this a little differently? Do I have free reign? I said, absolutely. We turned down George Lucas. What do you want to do? And he took it from there.
Yeah. And so when we were talking about this, in my little devious mind in the back, I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, like he said, I said, can I do it the way I want to do it? And Derek is always open to new ideas. So he said, sure, Fred. And so what this format is, if you think about something like a news program, not the news, but where they talk about, forensic files or that kind of thing. We're not coming in and giving you a bunch of stats and that kind of stuff and having people sit on a panel, not knocking that, but we wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something different. So this is almost like a television show in a way. And I have called on certain friends, one of them being Marc Peatock, and he will make his acting debut. And what it is I've got 4 people that are telling stories about, 2 of them which are hacks. Marc that's one of the ones he's doing, and 2 of them which are IT errors, meaning they cause big problems. but the person is telling it as though they were them. I mean, Tom Shercliffe, my boss owner, is one of the actors. One of the guys that works with me is Casey O'Connor. And another one who was a former boss of mine, Eric, you're going to like this, Leroy Walden is
Oh,
an
Leroy's
actor.
going to be on there. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
And then to kick it all off, we got a hacker who's going to tell us why he likes doing what he does. And it's an actor, but it's somebody we all know, Terry McCorkle.
Oh,
And
nice. Nice.
So anyway, I'm inviting everybody to come and just be open to this event and just sit down like you're watching TV. That's what it's going to be.
Oh God, it's going to be so much fun. Derek, something you might not know. Mark's kind of shy about this, but have you guys ever seen the movie Apocalypse Now?
Yeah.
Actually, Mark had the role that Marlon Brando. Mark stepped away, and Marlon Brando took that role. So I'm curious, Fred. Does at some point in it does Mark go the horror? The horror.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's good.
No, he's got his own lines, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
That's good. That's good.
It is going to be so good. Mark, guys, that is so great. Fred and Derek. So listen, we gotta get some links to put in. So
yeah, I was going to say
register.
before we forget, I don't want, we're not finished the conversation, but how do people, where do they go and to register? I mean, say it, but obviously we'll put links and stuff.
Yeah, there's multiple places to find it, but if you go to cs2ai.org, cs2ai.org, it's on the homepage. It's also in our event listings, of course, with other things you can navigate to, but it's on the homepage because it's our next big event. So it's featured right there. And so people can see what it's about. There's some video trailers, little clips of some things kind of giving a hint to the video content there, and they can directly click and go to registration page.
And it's on the 28th. And what time does it begin?
1 p.m. Eastern. Wednesdays at 1. That's when we're doing our thing pretty much every week now.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool. Oh, man, this is so exciting.
It is. It is. So just, I want to come back to that. But again, while we've got these two experts here regarding cybersecurity, let me ask Derek first, is if there was one thing that you want to get across, let's just call it to the controls contractor, the integrators in the built environment concerning cybersecurity, what is that? What is the one thing that is key and most important with respect to cybersecurity if I am an integrator and a contractor? Then Fred, I'm going to ask you the same thing, to be honest with you.
You know, Mark, a number of things come to mind, but I'm going to just pick one because I also speak to not building controls. I speak to business owner groups separate from CSA. I speak to business owners typically in the middle market and smaller. And what I just did one yesterday for a group in Charleston or in Raleigh-Durham. And this, I think, would be the same answer, which is you got to build a security culture. You got to make it part of your culture. It's not it can't be this, stepchild or bolt on or leftover, or we don't really want to do it, but we'll do it. You got to commit to making it part of your culture. Now, you may in different companies decide to do different things. It's not a one size fits all or same investment size, but commit to it being, to being important. And that's what I'm trying to do when I talk to CEOs is just, that's my whole goal. I said, you're not going to walk away from spending a couple hours with me or coming to one of our CSA sessions and just magically be better. You're going to have to say, I'm going to commit to a journey, which you never arrive. It's a journey of excellence, of being better and mitigating more risk. And so I try to also, not scare people by saying, you're not trying to get from here to here, just start getting here and celebrate the successes.
That's good. Good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to resonate or repeat what Derek said. Yeah, what I want to put it in terms of something I think the integrator community can understand is when I first started working, and I'm a little bit older than I want to be, but when I first started working, OSHA wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. And if I was scared to do something like climb up a 100-foot tower and change a light bulb, then my coworkers thought I was a wimp, right? Well, in the integrator community, it's still that kind of work environment where you're working on buildings and all this. And so every one of these people understand and adhere to OSHA standards. We need to create cyber awareness just like safety awareness so that it promotes the culture of I know I need to do this and there's consequences if I don't.
Mhm.
Well said, Fred. Well said.
Both of you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Most
yeah.
definitely well said.
Yeah, absolutely too. Listen, guys, as we wind down, anything else you guys have to say or want to say before we, as Kenny likes to call it cookies? And
I just say thanks for being on the show. I would welcome anyone of any walk of life in any industry who wants to learn a little bit more about cybersecurity for control related systems, whether those be any type of deterministic engineered network. What is that? It's buildings, it's healthcare networks, it's gas and oil, it's manufacturing. If you touch that, if you're any aspect of your professional life touches those things and you say, I want to know more about cybersecurity, come join us and learn some more about it. And we've got great people, like Fred and Mark are the kinds of speakers, that are just dispensing with this collected wisdom that took them, decades to accumulate. So come get some of that.
awesome. Fred?
Yeah. So I want to also to promote CSA because I have people hit me up all the time and say, well, where do I need to go? What do I need to learn? And I just tell them basically the same thing that happened to me is being a part of CSA and being around other professionals. And you can't imagine how much these guys are willing to share knowledge. And, it's not a scary environment where I'm going to ask the wrong question. I'm going to ask the dumb question. Well, I've never had that. And I've been able to ask questions that people I would even think were dumb, but it's a good environment to be in. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've met, go ahead, Marcus.
I was going to say one thing I want to ask, and I meant to ask it before. Okay. From Fred and Derek's perspective, we talk a lot about OT and IT, and I think there's not one person who doesn't believe that they're converging, they're closer. You can't have one without the other, so forth and so on. Just a couple thoughts on that whole OT IT side now before we leave, if you don't mind.
We just did a session Wednesday, 2 days ago, and it was Dr. Art Conklin, and this was his topic. And we have an ongoing discussion right now to even do a debate later this year, because there's some people that think, that feel that those terms are charged. Convergence and everything's converging, it's not, and things should be separated, but they're never going to be separated again. And air gap, hopefully nobody uses that term anymore, but it it still comes up. I mean, even in Q&A that day, 2 days ago, somebody said, I've got management that feels that one of our facilities is air gapped. How do I disabuse them of that notion? How do I get them to think differently? So I think this idea is, they are converging, right? The technologies are converging. It doesn't mean, as one gentleman I know who's very concerned about this kind of nomenclature, he's like, it's not a flat network. It's not saying, hey, let's make them all one big flat network. It's not that kind of converging. It's saying, hey, these technologies have shown up over here, and they're showing up more and more over here, and there's logical things out. I'll just tell one story. I was at a meeting years ago. And there were some really amazing security people for a couple of days, actually, of meetings. And an executive from a major manufacturer spoke, who's subsequently become a friend, but I didn't know him then. And he said, hey, here is what we're doing. And we're going to be taking some data out of these devices, our devices, and it's going to go to the cloud. We have all this data, and then we're going to do stuff there with that. And then we're going to send stuff back and actually attenuate. So it's not data out for like we get analytics. We're going to send stuff back and attenuate this, adjust this device and require that, by the way, for warranty. And people were, and he went into the mathematics, the savings. He went into the millions in dollars scaled by all the number of places where you might have those sorts of devices. And it was big numbers. And so then around the water cooler, there were hardcore security people saying, horrified, the horror.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good one.
It all comes back, right? And so, and I sat in the middle of that, and they're, and it was very negative. And I said, we're going to have to come around to the idea that it's going to happen anyway. Did you hear about the numbers? Did you see the dollar signs?
Yeah.
So these things are going to happen because the dollar signs are too big. So why don't we talk about how we're going to do it, the architecture, how we're going to approach it. Some of you are so smart. And so start putting your brain power not on, we can't do that. How are we going to do it? Because the ship has sailed. It's sailing right now.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, really, I can't add a whole lot to that. The only thing, because that's perfect. The only thing I will say is when I run into IT guys and I've had several of them where they said, well, we already have policy. We're just going to put it over on the control system side. And I said, if you do that, you're going to create a lot of problems. And I cite NIST IR 8228. It was released in 2019. And the gist of the entire thing is you cannot manage or maintain OT devices with IT policies and processes.
Both of you, well said, well said.
Marcus, anything to add?
No, no. I said that's good. That was really good. I'm glad I remembered to ask that particular question because I know that is definitely on the minds of a lot of people within our industry, and for sure.
Can I
Very,
add one
very
more thing
cool.
on that? Mark?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Derek.
I'd love to ask that question because people also say, we're asking ourselves, what's CSA's mission? And based on the work that I was doing and all the exposure, it is bringing people together from the different camps, not just IT, OT. There's some other constituencies, right? And I have seen, when I was a vendor, huge dysfunction inside the same company. Don't trust these people, don't trust, So I think we see one of our missions is learn the vocabulary, learn the differences. I mean, Fred's right. He's like, you can't just take this thing over here and plug it in. You can't just do what works over here. It's going to work over there. I still have those conversations too. I was talking with somebody who wanted to present to our audience, but he's firmly in the IT cybersecurity realm. He said, our product would be great over there. And as we started talking, I realized this very mature, older gentleman, lots of years of service and now, this company didn't understand fundamentally that you couldn't just plug in something that really worked in a cybersecurity IT environment. You couldn't just plug it in over here and say, it'll work. It'll be great. You guys should all adopt it. And so I think it's learn what the other party's talking about. Neither one can say, we'll take care of this. We've got all the knowledge we need. No, there's some stakeholders over here that have some great stuff. So get together and tear down the walls between those groups. That's I think partly what I hope CSA helps accomplish.
Derek, I tell you what, I am so inspired by what you just said there because you're absolutely right. I mean, you need to take this and then just put it out in the culture in general, right? We need to listen to each other and we need to talk a common vocabulary and we need to work together for a solution and, not pointing the fingers anymore. So, man, you guys, congratulations on the work you're doing. Hey, world premiere next Wednesday. We'll put a link in the show. Fred Scorsese and Mark Brando will be making their debuts. And Mark, you just want to give them the horror from the Marlon
horror. Was it Marlon Brando? No, that was Martin Sheen who popped out of the swamp in the face. That wasn't Brando, was it?
No.
That was Shane. I got a question for Mark. Did you get malaria filming this thing with Fred? I heard a rumor that you actually got malaria while you were filming for Fred. And
well, what's interesting is that we had to. They wanted some more filming done on The Godfather, a special scene that wasn't in the original, and I couldn't do it because I was sick there for a while. To your point.
Yeah.
Well, Fred's supposedly going to be doing The Godfather 18 here pretty soon after he's done with this. So, Fred, that might be a great one for the next session you do. You could do like a Godfather type thing. The family is coming together, about attacking the different hackers and all that stuff.
Exactly,
so,
that's good.
I got an advanced copy of the script, by the way, and it's. I gave him some negative feedback. I was like, the rise of the buildings are taking over. I thought was a little extreme. But, yeah.
Well, there you go.
I don't know what the problem is.
But this is what happens with creative minds from people that grew up in the 60s and the 70s, right? I mean, we sort of have these flashbacks. We feel young again. Get in touch with those creative juices. Derek, Fred, man, thank you guys so much for this. And hopefully we can get you guys to come back on. Wednesday's going to be an absolute must. We'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. And Mark, we'll just do an outro with our friends here. What do you say? Because tell us one more. We got to sign up for your event too, or Haystacks event.
For Haystack Connect, May 4th through the 6th. And again, open to everybody. Come join, come learn about tagging and data modeling and
good stuff,
all that kind of good stuff. And, it's interesting is that just got a little text message from Mr. Smyers. and it's cryptic, but I'm still trying to figure this out. So whether he's up there in that space station or wherever, I still don't know. But Kenny, for you, buddy, be bold and stay in control. Indeed.
Indeed. And that's a wrap, you guys. Thanks so much.
Basic idea is
Ah, well done, fellas.
that there's a group
Well,
that I can
well,
follow.
that was a lot of
Exactly right.
Sometimes when I try to reason, you don't seem to listen.